The sleeping giant. The name humanity conjures up many images. Humanity is the premier trading power of the galaxy. If you want something, the Terrans will get it for you. Their ideal X-class superfreighters are a sight to behold, capable of holding more than 1 billion tons of raw materials and luxury goods. With a crew full of Terrans, you can be guaranteed that nothing will interfere with your cargo. Positioned 25,000 light-years from the galactic core, the Terrans were isolated from the disputes of the galactic conglomerate. However, they weren't too far away that it would take 6 months for a ship to reach its destination. Instead, it took just under a Terran month to arrive at the home of the galactic conglomerate. The Terrans claimed to be pacifists and stated that they would not interfere with galactic politics. This principle was put to the test when the Titunk War broke out. The Terrans traded with both sides, providing them with food and dihydrogen monoxide. They told the Galactic Council that this was to ensure the survival of civilians. Researchers investigated the Terran military doctrine and discovered a rich history that abruptly ended 100 years before first contact. During a conflict they referred to as the War to End History, it was revealed that the Terrans found something within themselves during that war, leading them to swear off destruction. After the war, they forged a document that the new Terran government must follow regarding warfare, with the protection of civilians at the top of the list. This notion was foreign to us. Once a country initiates a war, everyone is involved. The Terrans insisted that one cannot poison the water that factory workers drink simply to slow down production. This was genuinely foreign to us. However, we let them be, as we question why we should stop them from practicing their pacifist ideology. When the bombing of IMA by the Tit forces occurred, the Terrans suddenly halted all ships transporting goods to Tit territories and even turned around those already in transit. This act shocked the Tit government, which immediately inquired why the Terrans had ceased transporting vital aid. The Terrans stated that they could not be complicit in the killing of civilians. The Tits were outraged, viewing this action as tantamount to a declaration of war. However, the Terrans were too far away for anyone to imagine mustering an army to challenge them. As a result, the galaxy watched as Tit civilization collapsed into a brutal civil war. The Terrans could not stand by and watch the suffering endure, even though they were indirectly responsible. Unfortunately, the Tit public shared the same opinion as their government, and the Terran peace forces were pushed back by an angry mob of civilians. The Terrans realized that the rest of the galaxy did not think like them and viewed their ideals as borderline crazy. Accepting this fact, they continued to trade with the core, but would no longer supply governments during wartime. However, the Terrans did not see that their enemies began perceiving them as weak-minded, and that their vast resources made them easy pickings for anyone within range. This notion of within range was crucial, as it took weeks for any fleet to traverse the necessary space to reach the border of the Terran Federation, and even more time to arrive at Terra itself. Only 2 empires were capable of such a journey, the Fava Empire and the District Empire. The districts were neutral toward the Terrans and, being militaristic, fancied the Terrans' chances in battle. As they put it, you never unlearn the art of war. The Fava, however, were much more opposed to the Terrans, and the 2 species had multiple close calls, mainly when superfreighters were shot at for trespassing into Fava space. Things began to escalate for the Fava when one of their stars went supernova, destroying a significant part of their agricultural regions. Consequently, a famine ensued. In their desperation for food, the Fava started sponsoring attacks on superfreighters to collect supplies for the hungry. Most of these were peaceful hijackings that stole the superfreighters and fled into Fava territory. Of course, the Fava denied sponsoring the pirates, claiming that the pirates were simply looking out for their loved ones. The Terrans grew suspicious and began lightly arming their superfreighters. This militarization of cargo created a proxy war between the Terrans and the Fava, with only one side aware that it was a proxy conflict. Then the Fava did something that infuriated the Terrans. They massacred a crew overnight. The Fava were no longer harboring pirates. They had become terrorists. The Terrans demanded the immediate surrender of the pirates responsible and the commander of the pirate organization. The Fava acted oblivious, insisting they did not know what the Terrans were talking about and that the pirates were not a cohesive group. Displeased, the Terrans warned the Fava royals that if they could not hand over those responsible for the deaths of 578 Terran crew members, war would be declared. The Fava queen scoffed in the Terrans' faces, agreeing to their demands. You see, the Fava could not hand over those responsible because they were all high-level commanders who had not intended to kill the Terran crew. However, kinship was stronger than all, and the Fava had to protect them. Compared to the Terrans, the Fava fleets were quickly operational due to their recent conflict. They sent out their first war fleets only 6 months after the war began. Knowing that the planets and solar systems closest to the border would be heavily armed, they took a longer route, hoping that Terran scanners would miss them. When they finally reached the system of Fails, the Fava caught the system completely off guard, and with minimal defenses, they crushed it but did not destroy it. This attack was a statement to humanity. We can strike at you anywhere, and we will defeat you. Unfortunately, this backfired on the Fava, as the attack only seemed to fuel the fire of humanity's rage. Following the attack, a statement from a Terran diplomat after the Terrans' first united front was published across news organizations throughout the galaxy. The Terran leadership declared, "May we hope that the giant of war may never awaken. After millennia of pursuit, it has grown tired. May it only grumble and snore in its long sleep. We must strive to keep it within its slumber. One day, it might once again walk this earth to spite us all." At first, many races were confused about what the original speaker was implying. The speech was layered with metaphors that made it hard to decipher. Some thought it referred to a literal giant walking the earth, while others speculated it was about the Terran ability to wage war. I proposed that it might refer to the Terrans simply preparing for war. My theory gained traction as reports of massive fleets moving within Terran space emerged. This intel was dismissed, as the ships were ultimately identified as super freighters transporting vast amounts of steel. The Fava continued their attacks, each one meeting with more resistance than the last. With the growing losses suffered by the attack fleet, the Fava commander decided to take a more strategic position and claim victory. They boasted before the Galactic Council about how easily they had defeated the Terrans and how little fight the Terrans had put up. After the speech, all eyes in the Galactic Council turned to the lowly Terran ambassador, who was smirking. Standing up, she began to use the same metaphor from the previous Terran speech. The giant cannot simply wake up and start fighting. They need to cook breakfast, gear up, and grab their weapons. Only then can the true fight begin. "The war is not over until we say it is," she stated firmly. The Fava ambassador laughed, as if the Terran had just told the greatest joke in the world. "The district seems to have overconfidence in you. It appears you have forgotten how war works. Or do I need to explain it to you, as if you were a child?" The Fava ambassador spat in response. Not amused, the Terran stood, stern and deadly serious, and began to speak with fire in her bright blue eyes. "A forge does not simply ignite to the point where it can melt iron. No! It needs to be heated first. Sometimes, you may place the iron in too early and it does not melt instantly. You and your race are the iron, ambassador. Sooner or later, you will start to melt." As she walked out to stunned silence, little did we know at the time that things were moving within Terran space. Old designs and concepts were being built in factories surrounding great gas giants, with hundreds of millions of beings recruited to prepare for the great fight. Scientists concocted formidable weapons capable of burning away a planet's atmosphere. Finally, an armada spanning solar systems awaited at the Terran borders, like a wall on the brink of collapse. All of this remained secret and silent until the day it was activated. That day was January 25th on the Terran calendar. Sensors across the core picked up significant movement in space, heading toward the Fava Empire. Closer sensors informed the Corps that the campaign was so massive that space seemed to shift due to the sheer number of ships moving faster than light, all converging on Fava space. 2 weeks would typically suffice to gather some defenses, but for armies of Terran size, there was only one option: pray to your God for mercy and accept your impending doom. Foolishly, the Fava set up defenses along their borders, hoping they could hold out long enough to gather intel on what the Terran ships and weapons look like. However, they could not even manage that. The outposts lasted just 15 Galactic Standard minutes from first contact with the Terrans before ceasing all communication. The pictures they sent back haunted the Fava leadership. They showed a massive gray mass drawing closer before the feed was lost. The first solar system hit was the Gauge system. It lasted longer than the defensive outposts, but not by much, 37 minutes, before all signals were cut, except for the deepest military bunkers. They survived the longest, lasting 1 Galactic Standard day before the Terran military kicked down the door and severed their final communication from the system. In that time, they had taken out 3 other systems, and the Fava were increasingly worried as the Terran battering ram headed straight for Jura Prime, the Fava home system. The silver lining of the losses was that the Fava were gaining more information about the Terran attack. First, the main front was the Fava, nicknamed the Planet Killer. This charge was set to destroy everything in its path and clear the way for the supply front, ensuring the main front was well supplied with goods and ammunition. The big surprise was that the Terrans used projectile weapons that could only be countered with thick armor, unlike lasers, which could be blocked by a good enough shield. In a panic, the Fava scrambled to thicken the armor on their warships and mobilized every military asset they could to the Jura Prime system, hoping to make a final stand. To their surprise, when the Terrans finally arrived at Jura Prime, they maneuvered around it into neighboring systems. Real panic ensued as those in the know realized that the Terrans were performing an encirclement of the Jura Prime system. Every being in the system scrambled to make a speedy exit or bunkered down in readiness for a fight. Weeks passed, and the Terrans remained within the Jura Prime system. Then, the Terran ambassador called for a sudden emergency meeting of the Galactic conglomerate. As you all know, the Terran Republic has been at war with the Fava Empire. We want to uphold our promises and offer peace, only if the Fava surrender unconditionally to Terran forces. If our demands for peace are not met, we will destroy the entire Jura system, home to 58 billion Fava. Once we are done, the death toll could exceed 100 billion, plunging what remains of the Fava Empire into turmoil. So, does the Fava ambassador accept this surrender? The Terran spoke with authority, commanding the entire room. All eyes turned to where the Fava ambassador was meant to be sitting, but only an intern was present. "What happened to your ambassador?" the High Speaker asked. "He shot himself when we received the order for an emergency meeting, claiming this was the Terrans backing us into a corner." The intern stuttered out, "Dear me. Well, intern, you are now the ambassador to your people, and thus you must accept or decline the Terrans' peace offer," the High Speaker said, saddened by the news. At this, the intern said, "Okay," before suddenly collapsing. The Fava's direct line to leadership began to ring, as the Fava Queen was calling to accept the terms of the deal. Consequently, the great army surrounding Jura Prime retreated to Terran territories, leaving only one message in its wake: "May we hope that the giant of war may never awaken, for we have all witnessed the might of the giant and the power it wields. May it only grumble and snore in its long sleep. We must all strive to keep it asleep. One day, it might once again walk this earth despite us all. We must learn from our mistakes, so that the giant can rest again,